The funeral director slipped me a stapled packet right before the first hymn. I felt the paper edge bite my thumb as I opened it. Page 2 had my husband's name, a date from 3 weeks earlier, and a line that said the executor would read this aloud. I scanned the chapel. 40 folding chairs. My mother-in-law in the front row. If that page was read, I would lose the house and my job's board seat. At the bottom was a notarized sentence I had never seen, with a timestamp at 9:14 a.m. I folded the packet and stood anyway. The stapled packet burned my palm in row 3. I had ironed my black dress at 6:10 in the morning. I did it on the tiny board in my kitchen, the one that wobbles if you lean too hard. I skipped coffee because my stomach kept folding in on itself, like paper. I still paid for parking in the funeral home lot, $5 in wrinkled bills, because the machine would not take my card. I walked the chapel aisle slow, shoes clicking, and I kept smoothing the memorial program with my thumb. The paper was thick and glossy, a photo of Evan smiling in a blue shirt I never liked. His mother, Janice Bennett, did not look at me. She stared past my shoulder like I was a window. Then Trent Harlow stood near the microphone, holding my name. Trent was not family in any way that mattered to me. He was Evan's mother's trusted friend, the one who always showed up with legal words at holiday dinners. He wore a charcoal suit that fit too well for grief. When he saw me, he tapped the top of the microphone like he owned it. I sat anyway, packet hidden inside the program. My fingers kept tracing the staple line, back and forth, like I could erase it. The funeral director, Mara Keene, moved along the wall with a clipboard pressed to her chest. She avoided my eyes like she was afraid I would ask her why. Pastor Glenn Mercer cleared his throat and opened a thin book. His voice filled the room, soft and practiced. I tried to breathe in time with it. I failed. A hand squeezed my shoulder from behind, and it was not gentle. Janice leaned close enough that I smelled her peppermint gum. "Do not make a scene," she whispered, without moving her lips. Her eyes stayed on the front, polished and calm. I nodded because my body knows how to nod. My mind was stuck on one sentence. Notarized. Timestamp. Read aloud. Then my phone buzzed once against my thigh, one missed call. It was my office manager, Kayla Stokes. I should not have been thinking about work here, but I was. My board seat was not a trophy. It was my health insurance and my rent safety net. I had fought for it by showing up early, staying late, and never missing a grant deadline. I did not call her back. I slid the phone deeper into my bag and wrapped my fingers around the strap until my knuckles stung. My bag was the only thing I owned in this room that felt like mine. Mara stepped to the end of my row and mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." I watched her hand drift toward my program like she wanted to take it back. I tucked it tighter to my chest. Paper rustled. The sound was loud in my ears. The executor smiled when he saw the 9:14 line. Open tribute started after the first hymn. People stood one by one, clutching tissues, holding their grief like it was a certificate. A neighbor, Rena Wilkes, told a story about Evan fixing her porch light in the rain. A coworker talked about his laugh, like it was a gift he shared evenly. I kept my eyes on the aisle. I kept smoothing the program. My thumb left a faint streak on the glossy photo. Trent rose on the 3rd tribute. He did not look down at notes. He looked at the room like he was counting votes. He lifted a folder from the front table, then set it back down, slow, like a warning. "My role today is simple," he said, voice steady. "I am here to honor Evan's final wishes." Pastor Mercer shifted his hands on the lectern. Janice sat up straighter. I felt 40 pairs of eyes slide toward me without anyone turning their heads. Then Trent reached under the front table and pulled out an envelope. It was not white. It was cream, heavy, with an embossed seal that caught the light. He did not open it. He just held it up for the room to see, like a prop. My throat tightened. My packet was stapled, ugly, ordinary. That envelope looked official in a way that scares people into silence. He set it beside the microphone and glanced at Pastor Mercer. "This will be read aloud," he said. My fingers went numb around the program. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I wanted to stand and grab the envelope. I wanted to run. I wanted to ask Evan out loud why his final wishes had a timestamp and a threat. Instead, I slid the stapled packet out a half-inch and reread the line on page 2. The words swam, then sharpened. "Executor will read this aloud." Then my eyes snagged on the date again, and my stomach dropped. It was dated 3 weeks before the memorial, when Evan was already gone. Trent kept the cream envelope beside the microphone like it was holy. Pastor Mercer's hands tightened on the lectern. I watched my mother-in-law's jaw go still, like stone. "This will be read aloud," Trent said again, calmer than anyone grieving. He nodded at me, polite, deadly. "It is what Evan wanted." I stood before my knees, agreed. The stapled packet trembled inside my program. My thumb found the staples by habit. Smoothing, smoothing, smoothing. "The date is wrong," I said, voice low. "He was already gone." Trent smiled without warmth. "Then you should have no fear." End quote. The cream envelope's seal caught the chapel light. Mara Keene, the funeral director, stepped closer with her clipboard. She looked trapped between professionalism and pity. I slid my phone out of my bag and saw 2 new messages from Kayla Stokes, my office manager. First, "Call me." Second, "They're asking about your board seat." I locked the phone and shoved it back, hard enough to sting my fingers. If I lost that seat, I lost my insurance. If I lost my house, I lost my footing. Evan's photo stared up at me from the program like it was innocent. Trent leaned toward the microphone. But he did not read. He let the room hold its breath first. Then he spoke to Pastor Mercer, loud enough for everyone. "There is an emergency estate filing. We need to be at the courthouse within the hour." Janice finally looked at me. Her eyes were sharp and clean. "You're coming," she said, like it was a sentence. I did not want to go. But I also could not stay. I followed them out of the chapel with my program folded tight. The winter air hit my face like a slap. I walked fast across the parking lot, heels slipping on grit. Janice and Trent moved ahead of me, already talking in clipped, private words. Rena Wilkes, our neighbor, hovered near my shoulder, unsure if she was allowed to care. "Laura," she whispered, "what is this about?" I opened my mouth, and nothing useful came out. I shook my head once. Rena's gaze dropped to the stapled edge, peeking from my program. By the time we reached the courthouse, my hands were shaking from cold and anger. The security guard waved a wand across my coat pocket. I felt the hard rectangle of my phone, the soft bend of paper, the metal bite of staples. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and wet wool. People sat on benches with envelopes in their laps, eyes red, faces blank. Danielle Rusk, the estate clerk, stood by the clerk window, holding a stack of forms. She was younger than I expected, hair in a tight bun, lips pressed like she practiced saying no. She looked at Trent first, not me. "Mr. Harlow," she said. "You're early." "I like to be prepared," Trent answered. A door opened behind us, and Nadine Brooks stepped into the hallway. Nadine was the human resources director at my workplace, the one who spoke softly while cutting people loose. Seeing her here felt unreal, like work had followed me into grief and put its hand on my throat. Nadine's eyes flicked to mine. She did not wave. She held a slim folder against her chest and waited. My stomach tightened. Kayla's messages burned in my pocket. Trent turned slightly, giving Danielle a look that meant, "Now." Danielle lifted her chin and spoke to the hallway like she was reading a notice. "This filing alleges misrepresentation by the surviving spouse," she said. Rena sucked in a breath beside me. Pastor Mercer shifted his feet, his shoes squeaking on tile. Janice's face stayed smooth, almost satisfied. Trent stepped in, voice carrying. Laura knew about the accounts and signed off. The words hit me harder than the cold air outside. It was not just an accusation. It was a label. I took one step toward him, then stopped, because the hallway had turned into a room full of ears. "Repeat that." Slowly. Trent's eyebrows lifted. He leaned closer, almost amused. "You heard me." My pulse hammered in my neck. I could feel it in my teeth. Nadine's folder creaked under her grip. Danielle cleared her throat and slid a cream envelope across the counter toward me, the same one from the chapel. The embossed seal was pressed so deep it left a shadow. The embossed seal had my name spelled wrong. "Open it," Danielle said, not unkindly. For the record, my fingers hesitated at the flap. Then I slid a nail under the seal and tore it. The paper ripped with a sound that made several heads turn. Inside was a single page with a notary block and a timestamp at 9:14 a.m., just like the stapled packet. Below it sat a printed account summary I had never seen. 2 deposits, same day, same amount, split in half. I stared at the numbers until they stopped swimming. Evan's paycheck never split like that. Evan got paid on Fridays, direct, one line, clean. This was 2 lines, arranged like someone trying to hide a trail in plain sight. Trent watched my face, reading my reaction like it was the real document. Janice leaned in, voice soft and poisonous. "Tell them why, Laura." I swallowed, throat dry. "I didn't do this," I said. Danielle's stamp came down on another sheet with a sharp crack. A red mark bloomed on the paper like a bruise. The clerk stamped the docket. 2-3P R4187. Danielle slid the stamped page toward me, and my eyes snagged on one line near the bottom. The courthouse hallway clock said 12:47. I stared at it like it might blink and forgive me. Danielle Rusk kept stamping papers behind the clerk window. The stamp crack echoed like a metronome. 1:30 in the afternoon was printed like a threat. I sat on a hard bench and smoothed the stamped page flat. My thumb moved the same way it did on Evan's program, only now it was deliberate. I lined the corners up with the edge of my purse like I was building a small wall. Janice stood 10 feet away, whispering to Trent Harlow. She did not look upset. She looked prepared. Trent's hand rested on his folder, fingers spread, like a lid. Rena Wilkes hovered near the water fountain with a paper cup. She watched me the way people watch a spill they cannot stop. Nadine Brooks stepped closer, her slim folder pressed to her chest. "Laura," she said quietly, "I need you to hear me. I belong." I looked at her folder. My throat tightened. "Is my job doing this?" Nadine's gaze flicked down the hall, checking who was listening. Then she lowered her voice. "Trent contacted our board chair this morning. He said you are under an investigation for misused funds." I felt heat rise behind my eyes. I gripped my phone so hard the case creaked. "That's not true," I said. "I know," Nadine said, "but it is already moving." She slid her folder onto my knees. I opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a printed email, 1 page, clean margins, my name used like a weapon. Trent had written it like a fact, not a question. My stomach folded. I had skipped coffee. I had skipped breakfast. Now my body wanted to collapse, and my mind refused. "The hearing is in 40 minutes, I said, voice thin. Nadine nodded once. "Then we need something concrete. Now." I pulled my phone up and opened my credit monitoring report. My thumb slipped on the screen from sweat. I typed my password twice because my hands would not cooperate. The page loaded slowly, like it enjoyed the moment. The credit report showed a loan opened after Evan died. I stared at the date until it stopped being a blur. 2 days after his death, a new account, a new balance, $14,800, minimum payment due in 8 days. My mouth went dry. I scrolled lower. The account name meant nothing to me. The address line meant everything. "Look," I said, and held the phone toward Nadine. Nadine leaned in, eyes narrowing. Her calm face cracked for half a second. "That account should not exist," she said. I felt my pulse in my fingertips. I never applied for anything. Evan was gone. Rena drifted closer without asking permission. Her eyes flicked to the screen, then to my face. "Oh my God," she whispered, and covered her mouth with her knuckles. Trent's head turned like he heard her. His eyes locked on my phone. He walked toward us with slow confidence, like a man approaching a mess he planned. "What are we doing here?" he asked, voice polite. I stood, keeping the phone close to my chest. "You said I signed off," I said. "You said I knew." Trent's smile stayed in place. "Then you can explain the deposits," he said. Smooth as glass. "I'm not explaining your trap," I said, and my voice surprised me. Trent's eyes narrowed. "Careful," he said. "I have good did." Nadine stepped between us, 1 foot planted. "This is not a workplace meeting," she said. "Do not threaten her." Trent's smile thinned. "I am not threatening," he said. "I am protecting an estate." I turned away before my anger became a scene. I walked to the clerk window, phone in my hand, stamped page in the other. Danielle looked up, her face still careful. "I need a copy fee receipt," I said, "and I need you to see this." Danielle's eyes dropped to my phone. I angled it so the date was clear. I watched her pupils tighten. She reached under the counter and slid a small receipt book toward me. $3, she said, and pointed to a pen on a chain. I pulled 3 crumpled bills from my wallet and pressed them flat. I signed my name with a shaking hand, then smoothed the receipt like it could steady me. Danielle tore it off with a sharp rip. "What is that address?" she asked quietly. I swallowed. My tongue felt too big. I scrolled back up and read the line again, slower. It was not my home. It was not Evan's. It was an office suite. I looked down the hallway, past the benches and the disinfectant shine. Trent stood with Janice, watching me like he owned the next hour. Then I looked back at the screen and saw the mailing address clearly. The mailing address on the new account was Trent Harlow's suite number. I held my phone like it could burn me. Trent Harlow's suite number sat on the screen, plain. Not my house. Not Evan's. His. My name sat on the docket like a bruise. Nadine Brooks took a slow breath beside me. She did not touch me. She just stood close enough that I could feel heat through wool. At 1:30, she said, "They will say you are guilty." At 1:30, I said back, "I will show a date." I walked to the restroom at the end of the hall. I locked myself inside a stall and sat down fully clothed, elbows on my knees. My fingers kept smoothing the stamped page on top of my purse. My thumb moved over the paper like a prayer. I opened my bank account on my phone and stared. Evan's payroll used to land on Fridays at 6:15 in the morning. One clean line, same amount, same rhythm. The deposits in that envelope were different. 2 lines, same day, same amount split. A split done on purpose. I stood up and washed my hands even though they were clean. The water ran cold. I rubbed my palms until they turned pink. Then I called Kayla Stokes. She answered on the first ring, breathless. "Laura, where are you?" "At the courthouse," I said. "Why is Nadine there?" Kayla swallowed hard. "Trent called the board chair," she said. "He said you misused grant funds. He said he had documents." "He has a talent for paper," I said. My voice sounded calm. My body wasn't. "Do you need me?" Kayla asked. "I need you to pull my last 3 reimbursements," I said. "The ones with receipts. Every staple, every note." Kayla hesitated. "He said not to touch anything." "Touch it," I said. "Print it. Put it in an envelope." Silence. Then, "Okay," she said. "I'm doing it." I ended the call and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes looked flat, like I was watching a stranger. Nadine waited outside the restroom door. When I stepped out, she handed me a small paper cup of water. The rim was dented where her thumb had pressed. "You need a bank person," she said. "I need a bank person who will speak," I answered. Nadine nodded. "I can get you one." She led me down the hallway, past the benches, past Janice and Trent whispering like they were sharing a recipe. Trent looked up as we passed and smiled. "I hope you're not spiraling," he said sweetly. I did not stop walking. My nails dug into my phone case. At 1:12, Nadine made a call in the stairwell. She spoke low, precise, like she was scheduling a meeting. Then she texted me one name, Malcolm Price. "Bank branch manager," she said. "He owes me a favor." We left the courthouse in a rush. The air outside felt sharper now. My heels clicked too fast over the sidewalk cracks. Nadine's coat flapped open, and she kept pulling it shut with one hand. We drove to a bank branch 10 minutes away. The parking lot was half full. A flag snapped in the wind. I paid for 2-hour parking at a kiosk, $8 and change, because I could not risk a tow today. Inside, the air smelled like carpet cleaner and old pens. Malcolm Price met us by the offices in back. He was in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His tie hung loose, like he had already been dragged through someone else's emergency. "Laura Bennett?" he asked. I nodded. My mouth was too dry for anything else. Malcolm held out his hand. I shook it. His grip was quick and warm, professional. Nadine leaned in, voice hard. "She needs confirmation," she said, "with dates." Malcolm looked at my face. Then he looked at my phone. "Show me," he said. I scrolled to the credit monitoring page again and held it out. He read in silence. His eyes narrowed on the address. "That is not okay," he said quietly. I swallowed. "It's his suite number," I said. "The Executor." Malcolm turned and motioned us into his office. He closed the door behind us with a soft click, like he was shutting out noise. He pulled a folder from his desk drawer. He slid it toward me, then stopped. "Before I do anything," he said, "I need you to tell me something." "What?" I asked. "Did you authorize any new account after your husband died?" he said. "No," I said. The word came out sharp. "He died. He was gone." Malcolm nodded once. He opened a computer screen I could not see. His fingers moved fast on a keyboard. He did not narrate. He did not comfort. He printed a page and laid it on the desk between us. 2 deposits, same day, same amount. Split down the middle, like the envelope showed. "Those are internal transfers," Malcolm said, "not payroll." My chest tightened. "From where?" I asked. Malcolm shook his head. "I cannot say the source without a formal request," he said. "But I can say this." He tapped the printed page with his pen. "Someone tried to make it look like normal income." I stared at the numbers. My eyes hunted for a pattern. My brain snapped into the part of me that trusts paper. Nadine leaned closer. "Can you freeze it?" she asked. Malcolm's jaw tensed. "If it's fraud," he said, "I can flag it. I can also document that the mailing address is tied to an office suite." He turned the paper slightly so I could see a line at the bottom. It listed the address again, and under it, a contact phone number. I recognized the number. It was the same number Trent used to call Evan's mother. My stomach lurched. I pressed my palm flat on the desk, like I needed something solid. The embossed seal left a ring on my thumb. I opened my bag and pulled out the cream envelope from the courthouse. I set it on Malcolm's desk with both hands, like placing something dangerous. I slid it toward him. "This was used at a memorial," I said. They were going to read it aloud. Malcolm's eyes flicked up. "Read it aloud," he repeated. "Yes," Nadine said, and her voice went colder. "In front of witnesses." Malcolm's mouth tightened. He stood, opened the door, and spoke to someone outside in a low voice. When he came back, he had another sheet of paper. He put it in front of me. It was a verification letter on bank letterhead. It stated, in plain words, that the account address matched an office suite and that the transfer pattern was inconsistent with payroll deposits. He slid a pen toward me. "Sign here," he said, "so I can release this to your attorney." "I don't have an attorney," I said. Nadine's eyes cut to mine. "You will," she said. We left the bank with the verification letter in a stamped envelope, Malcolm's signature still wet. My hands shook as I held it, and I kept smoothing the paper anyway, like I could press the fear out. In the car, Nadine called someone and gave my name. Her voice stayed flat, controlled. When she hung up, she looked at me. "You have a choice," she said. "You can stop the memorial reading." I stared at the funeral home across town in my mind. The aisle, the microphone, the room full of ears. "No," I said. "I'm letting him read it." Nadine's eyebrows lifted. "Why?" "Because he wants witnesses," I said. "So do I." My phone buzzed again in my lap. One new message. It was from Mara Keene, the funeral director. It read, "He just added one more page to the packet. It has been a viewing." The funeral home smelled like lilies and floor wax. I walked in with a stamped envelope in my coat pocket. My fingers kept smoothing it flat against my thigh. The chapel was fuller now. More coats, more wet eyes. Pastor Glenn Mercer stood near the lectern, waiting. Mara Keene hovered by the side wall with her clipboard. She saw me and lifted her chin toward the front table. Trent Harlow had added a fresh page to the stack. It sat on top like a blade, bright white, corners too sharp. Janice Bennett sat in the front row, hands folded tight. Rena Wilkes took a seat near the aisle, watching me like a warning. I slid into the last row and opened my program. The stapled packet was still inside, biting my thumb again. I read the new page without lifting it, keeping it low. It was a statement to be read aloud. My name appeared 3 times. Underlined once. In black ink. It said I knowingly consented to accounts I had never touched. The underlined name looked like a bruise. Trent walked to the microphone and tapped it once. The small pop made several people flinch. He waited anyway. "My role today is simple," he said. "Final wishes, final truth." He looked at me, then at the room. And clarity. Janice turned slightly, just enough for me to see her smile. Trent lifted the cream envelope, held it up, and spoke louder. "For the record," he said, "Laura knew about the accounts and signed off. I have not nowist." A few heads turned toward me. A few didn't, like they already decided. I stood. My knees shook, but my voice came out steady. "Repeat that." Slowly. Trent's eyes narrowed. "Laura knew about the accounts," he repeated, slower, and signed off. I pulled the stamped envelope from my pocket and held it up. The seal was already torn. Malcolm Price's signature was still dark. "This is from the bank," I said. It's dated today. Trent's smile stayed in place. She brought paper, he said, amused. He looked at the room like he was teaching them something. Anyone can. Mara took one step forward. Her clipboard trembled in her hand. Pastor Mercer swallowed, his fingers tightening on the lectern. I walked down the chapel aisle. My heels clicked on tile. I kept smoothing the envelope as I walked. One thumb, calm pressure. Nadine Brooks stood near the side door, eyes hard. She nodded once, like a signal. Malcolm Price stepped in behind her, sleeves rolled up, face set. He carried a second envelope, thicker, edges crisp. Trent's eyes flicked to Malcolm, then back to me. You invited guests, Trent said. How fitting. Malcolm did not look at Trent. He looked at Pastor Mercer. I am the branch manager, he said, voice clear. I can speak to records. Trent lifted his hand, palm out, controlling. This is a memorial. This is a public accusation, Malcolm said. In a memorial. It is. I slid Malcolm's letter onto the front table, right beside Trent's envelope. I pressed my palm flat on it, smoothing it once, like sealing it down. Read mine, I said to Trent. On the microphone. Trent's jaw tightened. He leaned in, voice sharp. No. Pastor Mercer finally moved. He reached for the letter with both hands, slow. He opened it and his eyes scanned the first lines. A hush spread across the chairs, even the coughs stopping. Pastor Mercer cleared his throat. This letter states, he read, that the mailing address for the disputed account matches the executor's office suite. A sound left Janice's mouth, small and involuntary. Pastor Mercer kept reading, voice trembling now. It also states the deposit pattern is inconsistent with normal payroll. Malcolm stepped closer and placed another sheet on the table. A court printout. Fresh ink. Straight edges. Nadine's voice cut through, flat and controlled. Emergency filing. 1:12 p.m. Finders, takes defenses, and destroying the debtors, and discrabans. Trent's eyes snapped to the printout. He reached for it. I slapped my hand down first. It was a thin move, but it worked. His fingers stopped. I leaned closer and read the line out loud, quiet, deadly. Petition to remove Trent Harlow as executor. Blue ink stamped the bottom. Time, date, a clerk's mark. Trent's face went pale in a way grief never did. Janice stood up so fast her purse slid off her lap. You're lying, she snapped, loud enough for everyone. She pointed at me like I was a stain. She is doing this to him. Malcolm looked at her, then at the room. The address is his, he said. He tapped the line with his pen. That is not opinion. That is record. Two men in dark uniforms appeared at the back of the chapel. Mara's shoulders sagged like she had been holding them up all day. One officer stepped forward, hand near his belt, voice calm. Trent Harlow? He asked. Trent's throat worked. Yes, he said. Too quickly. We need you to come with us, the officer said. Now. Trent tried to laugh. It came out thin. This is insane. Janice moved toward the aisle, blocking. This is a funeral, she said. You can't do this here. The officer did not raise his voice. Ma'am. Step aside. Trent looked at me then, real fear finally breaking through. He opened his mouth like he was about to bargain. Nadine's eyes stayed on him, cold. Do it on record, she said. Trent shut his mouth. The officers guided him down the aisle. People pulled their knees in as he passed. I watched his cuffed hands, the metal bright against his suit. Blue lights flashed through the chapel windows at 6:30. Outside, the air smelled like exhaust and wet pavement. I walked behind the officers without touching Trent, without speaking. My phone buzzed with a new message and I ignored it. At the police station front desk, the lights were harsh and flat. A clerk pushed a clipboard toward me and a pen on a chain. Witness statement, she said, eyes on the paper, not my face. Print your name. I wrote Laura Bennett in slow block letters. My hand shook and the ink smudged under my palm. Across the room, Trent sat on a plastic chair, wrists together, staring ahead. Janice stood near the wall, furious and silent, her lips pressed tight. An officer returned with a small stack of papers and said Trent's name again. Trent stood, jaw tight, and disappeared through a door that locked behind him. Then the officer turned back to me and said, Ma'am, your board chair just called. The clerk at the front desk slid my phone back. The board chair, she said, eyes on her screen. My fingers were stained from the chained pen. Blue ink sat in the grooves of my skin like dirt you cannot scrub off fast. I lifted the phone and pressed it to my ear anyway. "Laura," Mark Ellison said, voice tight. He chaired our nonprofit board. He liked clean stories and clean numbers. "I am hearing you're tied to a fraud filing." I looked through the glass at Trent Harlow's empty chair. An officer had taken him through a door that locked. Janice Bennett stood farther back, rigid. Her purse strap twisted around her fist. "I am tied to an accusation," I said. "Not a fact." Mark exhaled. "Human Resources Director Nadine Brooks is here too." "Why?" "Because Trent contacted you," I said. "And because he used my name as a weapon." Mark went quiet for a beat. I could picture him at his desk, tapping a calendar, deciding if I was worth risk. "I need you to step away from the board," he said finally, "at least until this settles." I reached into my coat pocket and touched the stamped envelope. It crinkled under my fingers. I kept smoothing it flat, small, controlled moves. Malcolm Price's letter sat between my fingerprints. "I have a bank verification letter," I said. "It ties the account mailing address to Trent's office suite. It also says the deposit pattern was staged." Mark's voice changed, not softer, more careful. "Can you send it?" "I can hand it to you," I said. "Today." Mark swallowed. "Do that," he said. "And Laura, do not delete anything." "I'm not the one hiding," I said. He hung up without apology. I stared at the phone screen until it dimmed, then I slid it back across the counter. The clerk pushed a new sheet toward me. "Statement copy," she said. "Sign here." I took the chained pen again and wrote my name slowly. The ink dragged. My hand shook. When I lifted my palm, a blue smear stayed behind like a bruise. Nadine Brooks stepped to my side. Her posture was straight, her face flat. She held her folder against her ribs like it was armor. "You did good," she said, quiet. "I did necessary," I answered. An officer returned with a small paper bag. "Your personal items from the chapel," he said. "Purse, program, that stapled packet." He set the bag on the counter. I reached in and pulled out my memorial program. The glossy photo of Evans stared up at me again, smiling like none of this existed. The stapled packet slid out and scratched my thumb the same way it had before. I wanted to throw it away. I did not. I folded it once, then again, and tucked it inside the program like it was evidence and grief at the same time. Outside, the air cut cold across my face. Nadine walked me to her car. The streetlight above the lot flickered, then steadied. Blue light still washed the bricks across the street, fading now, like a tide pulling back. "You need to go back," Nadine said, hand on her steering wheel. "You left your coat and your keys at the funeral home." "I also left my dignity there," I said. "But I'm done trying to retrieve it." Nadine started the engine anyway. "You can retrieve your things," she said, "and you can leave the rest. It's not Seddon." We drove back in silence. My phone stayed in my lap. I did not open it. I kept my hands on the program, smoothing the paper by habit, then stopping myself like it was an addiction. When we pulled into the funeral home lot, I noticed the guest book table through the front windows. A bowl of mints, a stack of pens, Evan's name printed on a small white card. 2 officers were at the entrance, speaking low to Mara Keene. Mara's shoulders looked smaller now, like she had finally let herself feel the weight. Trent was walked past the guest book without looking at it. He did not fight. He did not charm. He kept his eyes straight ahead like the hallway was a tunnel. The cuffs flashed once under the foyer lights, bright metal against charcoal fabric. Janice tried to follow, one step too fast. An officer lifted a hand, calm, firm, and she stopped like she hit an invisible wall. Her face hardened into something that would have scared me yesterday. Today, it just looked tired. Mara approached me with my coat folded over her arm. She held my keys on 2 fingers like she did not want to touch them. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cracked. "I know," I said. I took the coat and keys. My fingers closed around the key ring. The metal bit into my skin. It felt real. It felt mine. In the hallway near the restrooms, I stopped at the sink. The light above it buzzed. The mirror showed my face, pale and flat, like I had stepped out of my own life. I turned on the faucet. Cold water ran. I pumped soap and scrubbed my hands until the ink loosened. I washed the ink off at the funeral home sink. The blue stain swirled down the drain in thin ribbons. I watched until the water ran clear, then I shut it off and dried my hands on a rough paper towel. At home later, the quiet felt heavy. My kitchen clock ticked too loud. I set the program on the table and slid the stapled packet out one last time. I did not read it. I just smoothed the pages into a neat stack once and placed them in a drawer. I took off my wedding band and set it on top. Then I closed the drawer, and the room finally stayed quiet.